every time you make a loan repayment, this is so different than a normal bank. Every time you make a loan repayment, it's 100% capital. 100% capital.
Hey everyone, I just want to give you guys a quick disclaimer on this particular episode. I got really excited, I don't know, about 15-20 minutes into this recording, and I used the incorrect term quite a few times. I was talking about your loan repayments going into PUA. Loan repayments don't go back to PUA, okay? Loan repayments go back to pay off your outstanding loan balance, not to purchase additional life insurance. And I apologize for any confusion. If you have any questions at the end, just shoot me a message, email, whatever, reach out to us, and I can clear that up for you. All right, enjoy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another podcast with Sound Banking. My host and co-host, Kyle Reese, and myself, Raymond Ward. We picked up on another email or text. Actually, it started out as a text and morphed into an email response from a gentleman that I'm having a conversation with, and we thought it would be a good idea to flush that out. And so, I guess the way I'd like to start it, Kyle, is just lay the groundwork and just pull back the onion on one piece at a time of this, because there is an awful lot to unpack.
Yeah, absolutely. And before you dive into that, I think this is coming on the heels of the last podcast we recorded just, 2 days ago. And you got this text last night and sent it over to me, and I'm like, holy mackerel, there's a lot to discuss there. And you're not in your normal spot, I'm not in my normal spot, and we're like, hey, let's get on, let's make this recording, because the info's fresh. And honestly, this guy, he hats off to him. What was his name?
I'm just going to use his first initial, Jay.
Jay, there you go, Jay.
Yeah.
So Jay is, my hat goes off to him, because as we last discussed in our previous podcast episode, he feels like he got a little bit duped by his IBC practitioner, or the guy who set him up with his policy. May not have been an IBC practitioner, I don't really know, but he feels like he was duped, and yet he's still pursuing an understanding of this. That is where we all need to be, is knowing that we don't understand everything, no matter what topic it is, right? Obviously, we're here talking about infinite banking and finance, but if we're not approaching things with an open mind, then it's very difficult to move into that next stage of life that might be, the thing that changes many other people's lives. So my hat goes off to him. But yeah, take it away.
Yeah, that's really, I'm so happy you said that, because him sticking to and keep coming back with more, he did say at the beginning of his text that turned into an email that I really want to get this, but I'm struggling with this. He was struggling with the analogy in the previous video around the grocery store story that's in Nelson's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And so thank you for saying that. You can't, say any more about the guy's got a lot going on for himself in a very positive way, that he's curious, he's open, he's courageous, not getting frustrated, although he might be, I don't know.
Probably is. And it's super common. And to all of our listeners, the struggle when it is coming, when you're opening the book, Becoming Your Own Banker, when you're opening the idea of infinite banking and you're pursuing it, some people, it clicks like that. And that's awesome. I love it when that happens for folks. Other people, man, it takes 5, 6, 7 times of reading that book and just continuing to pursue it. And sometimes I've got clients that have gone through the process for over a year to try to understand this stuff. And so for everybody, it's a different pace, and most often it's a struggle, because it's such a different way of looking at life.
Yes. And looking at the banking function, most of us think in terms of being the consumer, being on the other side of the table, bowing to whatever a banker wants you to provide them.
Mm-hmm.
Like give me 2 years of tax returns, give me your latest paycheck, or give me your profit and loss and all those kinds of forms if you're
Yep.
a business owner. There's a lot of hoops that we're used to. So what, like the title says, becoming your own banker, what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
It really means that you're going to be the consumer still, but you're also going to be the banker on the other side of the table, sitting in that big leather chair and saying, okay, we need to do this. We need to have an amortization, all our terms, what happens if you are late with a payment. And that even goes for this, what we're talking about is if you're late, you should, put a little skin in the game, so to speak. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, so I just wanted to touch on certain sections of this. I broke it out.
Do you want to read the whole thing first, just to give everybody an idea of what we're talking about, and then go back in item by item?
Do you have it right in front of you? Because I've had it with my answers in it, and it's
Oh,
all black, and so um,
yeah. No, I do. I do have the text right in front of me. Um, it's yeah. I'll just do a quick recap on it, bring it all
yeah.
in one concise spot for the listeners. So he was saying, I appreciate your willingness to help me understand this. I really am trying to get it. Here's my problem with the grocery store analogy, and I totally get it because um, anytime you have an analogy, it always breaks down just a little bit. So I understand where he's coming from. So his problem in the story, I own the grocery store. So when I pay the 3 cents for the can of peas, that 3 cents is going out of one pocket and into another, or into the other. With the life insurance policy, the extra 3 cents, using this example to replacing the negative 1% interest that we have been discussing, that extra 3 cents is going to the life insurance company, not into my policy. Now, if that interest was going back into my policy, that would be a completely different story. Also, if I'm going to take a policy loan and pay myself the extra 10%, as you describe it, and put that money into a separate account like a CD or something, why couldn't I do the same thing when paying cash and be that much farther ahead?
First off, I just want to say you can do banking without using a life insurance policy. You can do it, but the difference is doing it inside of the tool of a life insurance policy that's with a mutual life insurance company that's paying dividends every single year. It's been around for over 100 years, very safe and secure. Mutual makes you part owner. All those things are aside from, you could do it without it, but why wouldn't you want to do it in the best place that you could? And that's what I think that, I certainly missed it in the beginning when I first found out about it. Didn't
Yeah.
take me long to get caught up because I was surrounded by people that knew about it.
Yeah. So
Understood it.
you bring up a really critical point, and that is that you could do it outside of whole life insurance policies with a mutual company. I want to hop over to becoming your own banker. I wish I had my paper copy here, but I don't. So on page 28, in part two, the human problems, understanding Parkinson's law, he explains.
Kyle?
Um,
Kyle?
yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay, so you can edit this out. Are you jumping in and out like you just disappeared?
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know I was going to disappear. See, there's always different things when you start using different platforms. This is all test and retest and learn. Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
Um,
you're on now.
well, yeah. So I don't know if it's still recording my my audio. Oh,
Yeah,
this
I
is
can
why I
see
wish I
you.
had.
I can see the audio bar flexing when you speak.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna search my see if I've got it on my phone so I can't pull it up there. But you know what? I'm just gonna say it. So Parkinson's law, he defines it as expenses to rise to equal income. A luxury once enjoyed becomes a necessity. And the third thing that Parkinson said was our work expands to meet the time envelope required. This is all on page 28. Okay, look at me doing this out of memory. I guess I've done it enough times. um,
Good job.
and down at the bottom left of page 28 is an absolute critical point. And what he says in there, everyone should pull up their copy of Becoming a Banker and read it. But what he says basically is you can, it, if you whip Parkinson's law, you're going to win by default because everything in the financial world is compared to what other people are doing. And if you can overcome these issues, these human problems, you're going to win. That's it. But if you can't, you're doomed to be a slave. And you may as well just give up right now. So, talking about bringing this back to your friend Jay, he is whipping Parkinson's law, right? He's already thinking like, why am I not doing, like, why would I not just do this where I know what I'm doing, like with cash? Let's just say, for example, you could totally do it with cash. You could do it with checkings and savings and stocks and bonds and all. You could do it with whatever you want to. The point is, it where you do it, like once you cross that hurdle, it's like, okay, if you're going to be doing it anyways, if you're going to be whipping Parkinson's law and going to be taking the banking function into your own hand and focusing on getting ahead in the future, why wouldn't you want to do that in the most optimal place to do it? So then we have to start defining what is optimal. What do you want your cash to do? What do you want the benefits of your banking system to provide? Because cash is just cash. It's simply transactional, and that's all it
Right.
is. A CD account, yeah, you're growing at interest. That's great. One step above cash. But the further you go into the different elements of the banking tool, the more you realize that whole life insurance is perfect. It's as close to perfect as it possibly could get.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's a great point to bring up, the whole Parkinson. um, yeah, Parkinson. Anyway, so what is the next step here? So from one pocket to the other, is that the next part?
The next part. Yeah, so he starts by saying, I own the grocery store. So when I pay the 3 cents for the can of peas, that 3 cents is going out of one pocket and into the other pocket, taking it from your right hand pocket to your left hand pocket. So you're basically still carrying the 3 cents. That's what he's saying, right?
Yes. So that 3 cents, whatever the number is you are, and he also points out that I'm sending it back to the insurance company, not into my policy. But what he's doing is he is sending it back to the insurance company. But what it's doing is it's releasing that 3 cents of collateral that he used to get that loan originally. He's releasing that to go back and be able to be used in the future again. Is that fair to say?
If the 3 cents you're referring to, I think when he's mentioning the 3 cents, he's talking about the interest paid to the life insurance company, the cost of capital, right? They made a loan to him and he's paying it back. So that 3 cents, that extra 3 cents, whatever, that's the cost of capital. It's going to the insurance company, not to his policy. What he was saying would be a whole different story is if it goes straight into his insurance policy. Now, it would go directly into his insurance policy if that 3 cents was dedicated to PUA purchase or loan repayment. But if it's all being calculated as part of the interest payment that gets charged at the end, then I get that, right? It's not necessary if it's going to pay interest. It's not necessarily releasing the collateralized capital because it's going to the insurance company.
Yeah, but I guess when I think of, just say instead of 3 cents, because that's really not realistic in that sense.
Yeah, right.
So that just say he sends $500 back to the insurance company, and he can choose to have that money go toward the loan or go to a PUA if he has that rider on there, and how much it is, if there's room there for it to go into that.
Right.
So but I want to get it clear in that. So he sends $500 back, and let's just say he wants that to go to the loan to pay back the loan to the insurance company. Isn't that also, it's paying back that loan, and it's releasing some of that collateralized money that he used to take on that loan?
Correct. Yep.
And it's there now again, part of it is there now again for him to use on another loan in the future.
Correct. But there's still a cost. There's still an interest cost.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And
that interest.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, what you were going to say was totally accurate. It gets charged on the anniversary, right? Or
Yes.
when you finish paying off that loan, if it's before the anniversary.
Yes. Like a few weeks or 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks before his anniversary, he's going to get a letter from the insurance company to say, this is what the outstanding interest, and you and I would encourage him to pay that so he's not rolling it into the loan.
Right.
Is that fair to say? I mean, I should
Yes.
just let you decide.
No, you're right. I mean, there's been times where I haven't had the money to pay my own interest, so that sucked. But that's again part of the freedom of doing banking with that's another
Right.
good quality that you get when you're banking with IBC instead of a normal bank. You don't have that option. You have to pay, or they come take whatever they collateralize. So here, I think that I'm trying to put myself into his perspective and the questions that he's asking. And what I am seeing is him asking about the big picture. We know that if your loan is for X amount and you're paying $500 back every single month on that loan. Let's just say, for an example, let's say that 450 of that is quote unquote loan repayment and 50 of that is quote unquote interest. Well, all 500 is going to loan repayment. That's the mechanics of how it's all working. Once the loan is paid off, you'll have that notice saying, hey, you also have this amount of 150 or 200, $500, whatever it is, of interest that you owe. If you pay off that loan in 6 months, then you'll just pay that interest payment at that point, or you'll pay the interest at the anniversary. What he's looking at is everything at one time. And so he's thinking of the $50 going towards interest payments, not going towards PUA loan repayments.
Okay.
Would you say that's accurate?
I think that's interesting because I didn't really pick up on that, but that sounds, I mean, I'm a little slow maybe in the way I think about it, like mechanically in my brain, but that sounds, yes, that 50's going to interest, 450's going to PUA, and at the end they're going to say, this is, when he goes to make, let's call it the final payment, they just say, this is interest, pay this off, and all of that then goes into the cash value. on the last
The
payment.
the interest?
Well, no, explain it to me, Kyle.
Okay, so when you pay off your loan, they will the really cool thing about payments back to your own policy is interest. It accrues daily, but it doesn't get charged. It gets charged annually. So at the very end, it gets charged annually, right? Well, every time you make a loan repayment, this is so different than a normal bank. Every time you make a loan repayment, it's 100% capital. 100% capital. It's accruing daily. Your interest is accruing daily at the insurance company. So
Right.
once that, either on your anniversary they're going to charge you the interest, or once the loan is paid off, if it's before the anniversary, they're going to charge you that interest. So let's just say you're paying $500 every single month, and you're thinking of $50 of that going towards interest. It's not. It's going towards PUA, and it's going directly into your own policy. What that's doing is speeding up the time at which it takes to pay off your loan. So if you're speeding that up, let's say you're 500 every single month, 50 of that you're thinking of as interest, so you're almost paying it off 10% faster, right?
Hmm.
So instead of paying it off in 11 months, you paid it off in 10 months. Well, let's say that your interest charge was um, was $400 at the end of all of that. Let's just say that's what it was. You've been paying $500 every single month for 10 months, and instead of paying it off in 11 months, you paid it off in 10. Well, that is now closed. That loan is now closed and it's all done. And in month 11, they're going to say, hey, your interest is $400. You just make one more payment of $400, and that goes to the interest, right? That doesn't go to your PUA. That's specifically, I mean, that's the cost of capital that goes to the insurance company.
Hmm.
And so then when you calculate it all out, you take your, Nelson was big into interest by volume, not the interest rate. If you take that $400 interest payment or whatever it is, I'm just coming up with
Yeah.
numbers on the spot, so
Yeah.
the math is all probably skewed. But if you take the $400 and you divide it by the total loan balance, you'll find that it wasn't 5% interest or whatever. It was probably like 4.5% interest or 4.3% interest by volume, because it only accrues daily and you are paying it off every single day or every single
Wow.
month.
Yeah. I don't know that I actually understood it that way before. All I know is I've been running a loan balance for a little while now. There was only one time when we first started the policy on my wife where we took a loan for, and I don't encourage people to take loans unless, they know exactly how they're going to pay it back early on, early in the
Yeah,
policy. But I didn't follow that rule my own self.
I know.
I,
Me too.
yeah, yeah. But I was strict with myself, and I didn't even talk to my wife about this. She just trusted me that I was going to, take care of things. But I was strict with ourselves to pay that loan back, and we paid it back relatively quickly, meaning 5 or 6 months. We took an $8,000 loan, and we paid it back pretty quick. And what I noticed was when I paid it off, there was like the cash value just jumped. And I
Mm.
was like, what was that? I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I mean, it really jumped. And I think what it was that I thought it was doing something different. I thought it was that all of a sudden, all that PUA showed up right at the very end when I made the payment. It looked like it popped. I mean, it was a while ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe my memory isn't quite accurate, but it
That's
was. What is that?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, it was exciting for me. I was like, wow, I didn't think that was going to happen. I just thought it was going to, I thought what I was looking at when I made that final payment and how it popped, I thought that was it, but um, well, I sent the payment and then it popped and I saw it and I was like, wow, there's a lot more money in there. And now actually, while I'm speaking about it, saying it like this, we had continued making premium payments over those four
Yep.
or 5 months. And, you know, so it's the two things that are going on. And
Yeah.
then I was just like, oh boy, this is, anyway,
It's
you
so
know,
funny because what you're saying is so accurate to both things that I've heard from other people and also my own clients. They watch their policies, and it's like, hey, it's growing, it's growing, it's growing, and then you do something, and then you come back, and you're like, what the? It just feels like a massive optical illusion. Like you can't believe what you're seeing. Like how is this right there? How is this happening right now?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I know I've experienced that for myself. It within my own policy. I'm like, I'm making my little tiny loan repayments, and they're smaller than they should be, but I've got the amount of cash flow that I have, and it is what it is. And but I'm making these payments, and I go back and I'm like, I'm sure I've only got, X amount in here. And I go look and it's like twice that. And I'm like, whoa, oh, that's exciting.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It just happens.
My, just to be a little off track, but my first client, when he started his policy, he was a gentleman that said, "I've been looking for this my whole life." You
Yeah.
know, he had gotten his master's in Austrian economics, and he was into finance and economics and all that. And he looked at it every single day. He tracked it for months, every single day, and he just couldn't believe it. Even at the very beginning, he couldn't believe what it was doing. That he could see it every day, get the cash value going up and up. What's also interesting is when you cross over that threshold that my wife and I just crossed over at the end of our 4th year with her policy, was that now, actually, I just checked it yesterday, that I've been taking snapshots of her page, what, I forget what they
Mm-hmm.
call it on the insurance companies.
Dashboard or whatever.
Yeah, on the dashboard, I've been taking pictures of her forms, and so I go back and I look, and so I can see now where the premium and the um, payments that we're making back to the loan, all of that money is showing up in cash value.
Yeah.
So so the instead of part of it being the cost of insurance being, because you got to cover that at the very beginning, and
Right.
commissions and all this buildings and salaries of the people that work there. Once you get past that, and at the end of, for us, it was the end of the 4th year, all of your premium that you send shows up in cash value. And then when you look down 10 years, you send that premium, and it might, just as an example, it might be 100, just say it's $100. But the cash value 10 years down the road, the cash value might be 150,
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Yeah, that's it. After going through the whole illustration with my clients, I get down to that, just I don't know. It's different for everybody. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And you obviously the numbers get more and more extreme. But I'm like, how would you like, we're looking at the numbers, increase in cash value and premium. I was like, how would you like to write a check for $5,000 and the amount of money that becomes available to you as a result of writing that check is $25,000. If you write a check for $5,000, you get $25,000 for it. If that was the option for you right now today, how fast would you write that check? And they're like, I'd be screaming to go write it like as fast as I possibly can. I'm like, that is your future. I'm not saying it might be. I'm saying it is your future. How exciting is that? Like you can't. That's
Yeah,
crazy. That's
yeah.
crazy.
The youngest client that I have, she was still in high school when she started it. And, she's putting in, I don't know, whatever it is. But when you look out, so she was 18, you look out to where she's 60 years old, it's insane.
Yeah,
The
it is insane.
it's more than 10 times.
Oh, I
She
know.
puts in 1,000, it's more than 10,000. It's like nuts.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
this is a lot of hoopla, a lot of,
I know. It's
it
so
sounds
funny
like we're
because
just jazzing it up, but
right,
it's
as you
it's
talk more about infinite banking, it becomes like this excitement and everything. It's just a natural product. Like you almost can't stop talking about it.
I know. Yeah. So is there anything else here on his uh
Yeah, there's a couple things that I did want to bring up. One of them is the grocery store analogy. When I pay the 3 cents, it's going into the other pocket. Totally agree with you. Uh, Here's the problem where that breaks down is you're taking 3 cents out of Jay's pocket and putting 3 cents into Jay's business pocket, right? Two separate entities. Everything is separated. You're not going to do your personal financing with you're not going to do your personal budgeting and your grocery store um,
or your
profits and
business.
lots. Yeah, right. Your business profits and lots. You're not going to do those in the same sitting. That's totally different, right? And there's different people at those meetings. It might just be you and your personal. It might be you and your wife. But with your grocery store, it's you, it's your board, it's like all these other things that are going through these financial sheets together. So yes, it's going from one pocket into another pocket, but it's you have to recognize that there is separation of entity there. And one of
True.
them is a business, and that business is designed to generate income, more income, and to be sold for a profit in the future to then retire off of or whatever it might be, as Nelson explained in the book. And so you have to recognize that anytime you're starting a business, you have to fund that business. There's a cost of that. And
Right.
Nelson's very clear in becoming your own banker about that. And that's why I always encourage people, read it again, because it's expensive to start a business.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And it's very time consuming, where if you can get this, most of the infrastructure, I'd say 95% of it is already really set up for you. If you wanted to just be sending, premium payments in, if you want to use it as a business, as a platform to leverage your capital to do bigger things outside of the policy, that's a whole other discussion.
Yep.
Um, but if you just want to let it go, all by itself. It's a powerful tool, and
Yep.
it's very, very safe in that insurance companies are investing dollar for dollar instead of fractionalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you want to, I always like to think of this is so foundational, so safe, if you will, with mutual or fraternal insurance companies, that it's got certainties and guarantees and all these things, unlike anything else. I think I probably said this in that previous podcast we made, but that it's unlike anything else you'll have in your portfolio. It is the safe foundational piece that allows everything else to work better.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? We've talked a little bit about our faith. I am a strong Christian. And one of the things that is really important when you're going through um, and reading the Bible is, and actually Nelson touched on this in his book, the parable of the 10 talents. And he
Mm.
talks about the stewarding of what you've been given. The guy who was given 5 went out and made 5 more, and when the master came home, he gave him 10. He transferred all the 10. He said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You will be you will be set in power to rule over cities and not just money." Right. So he gives him more authority because of his productivity. Same thing with the guy he gave 2 talents to. he came back and gave 4 back to the master, and he said the same thing. The guy he gave 1 talent to buried the talent, and he said, "You wicked and unfaithful servant," or whatever he called him. And he took the token back, that 1 talent, and kicked him out. He said, "You're done. I'm not doing anything else with you. You're not part of this anymore." This is the idea of stewardship. And what's really exciting, not every single one of my clients are business people. Not everybody's an investor. They don't want all of that. Infinite banking, it grows by itself. Okay, this is stewardship. You're given a certain amount of money and you make way more money with that just by putting it in this vehicle. Is it going to outperform investments done by a really great investment advisor? No. Is it going to outperform a business that is launched and goes successful? No. It's not going to outperform all those things. But for the people who don't do all of that stuff, even if they never leverage the policy, they have fulfilled their calling to steward what they've been given, and they leave their next generation in a better spot. That is insane. You can't do that with cash. You can't do that with CDs. You can't.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and everything outside of what you just mentioned, you know, business and brokerage firms and all that, if you're giving them your money, all of that gain is taxable.
Mm-hmm.
And inside the policy, that doesn't happen so long as you know what you're doing, right?
Yep.
And so if you want to take the risk outside of it, go right ahead, but realize that any gains, you know, the business grows, that if you have a business, you're looking for ways to save on your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And we never know when that game is going to change, you know, meaning are taxes going up or down or sideways? What are they doing? So we never know exactly how much we're really going to make because things can change.
Yep.
When you're not in control. So what else did we want to unpack here?
He mentioned the 3 cents going, you know, there's an arbitrage. We talked about arbitrage a little bit on our last call. That negative, he's losing 1%. Here's the thing. I believe, oh goodness, where was it? It's in the chapter summary. I think it might be on page 27. And it's titled Review or something in Becoming Your Own Banker. And that first thing that he said was imagination is more important than knowledge. And he references a story he told at the beginning about Carl Gauss and the way that he imagined the numbers of 1 to 1,000, flipping them on their head, adding them all up, coming up with 500,000 or whatever the number was.
I think it was 5,001 or something like that.
5,500. That's 500. What it was. Yeah. And so, or 5,050, one of the two. I don't remember. I don't have the imagination. But what he was saying was imagination is more powerful than knowledge because it's what you can do. Like you start to see the other opportunities, and everyone else, the vast majority of the people that you're going to pass by today are going through and thinking about everything logically or emotionally, right? They're just processing information. They're not imagining. And that's really what separates a lot of the folks who start down the path of infinite banking is, yeah, your imagination is not great right now. It isn't. You don't have anything to imagine with. But as you continue to develop more and more capital, as you learn what it means to become your own banker, suddenly you have the freedom to imagine, and you release different parts of your brain, and that's where power comes, right? That's where a lot of the opportunities are seen. They're not seen at the beginning, and that's why when people give up too soon because something wasn't what they expected or whatever, they lose out on what the power is of infinite banking. It's in the imagination.
Yeah. Two things. One is I just wanted to mention the book, The Richest Men from Babylon, which kind of goes along with what you were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. They discuss that story. That's a great book to read. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was about the imagination is the book 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And when you read that title, you go, how could that be possible? I'm going to have to work 5 times harder, than I'm
Mm-hmm.
already wearing myself out. But in actuality, when you say I want a 10X, that requires you to get rid of about 80% of what you're doing that isn't really performing for
Mm.
you. And when you do that and say, okay, how am I going to accomplish this 10X goal, which seems impossible, your brain starts to figure out and starts looking and listening and hearing and seeing, using your imagination to figure out how to get that done.
Oh,
It's
that's
the
a great point.
it's the same principle about imagination doesn't really occur until you put yourself in that place. So like you're saying, we're saying, some clients could just start these policies and not ever do anything with them because they just don't think that way. But
Right.
if they had it, and their minds would expand and open up, and you'd say, okay, I can figure out how to get this 10X thing done that I normally in the past never would have even thought about. And your
Yeah.
imagination has kicked in a big way.
Yeah. Our
So
imaginations are stifled so much by everything in our culture. I mean, marketing, business, life, it's busy. It's really busy. So why imagine something if you don't have the time to go do it? If you don't have the money to go do it, if you're short on any resources, you're not going to allow your brain to imagine, because then it just feels like your hope is getting smashed all the time. But when you start to free up some of those resources, whether it's capital or time or whatever, you
mhm.
start to kick in.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Um, the other
Anything
thing
else?
that, yeah, yeah, why couldn't I do the same thing when I'm paying cash and be that much farther ahead? Here's the crazy thing about infinite banking. Let's just say you take $100,000, something you can do something with in our day and age, and you throw it into an investment, and that investment is growing at 10% a year, right? That's awesome. You're getting an extra $1,000, or I mean $10,000 a year. It's almost $1,000 a month. That's fantastic. Um, Now you need to. It's growing at 10%, but you have this opportunity to go into business. You're a tech guy. You understand what it means to develop video, and you can partner up with your friend or colleague or whoever it might be who understands this other element, and you guys have a similar passion for something. You want to start a business together. You guys both need to buy in $50,000. Okay, what do? You have to take that 50,000 out of your investment. All of a sudden your 10% growth goes from 10,000 a year down to 5,000 a year. Okay, you have lost all of the capacity of that money, the future capacity of that money in that vehicle, and you've transferred it over to a business because you believe more in that and what it's going to do for you in the future than the investment, right? Well, that's just one element. We can talk about so many other tools other than just an investment. You could talk about real estate. You could talk about cash. What if you put $100,000 in cash? Yeah, you take the 100,000. You have to take 50,000 out. You have to subtract from whatever it is that you're doing. You cannot leverage it. There's some vehicles that you can leverage. Real estate is one of them, but again, you have to do it with permission. Okay, what if they don't give you permission? What if times are tight? What are you going to do? Oh, sorry, buddy, I don't have $50,000 to go into business with you. Maybe next time. Well, that opportunity is gone, right? And so, what infinite banking does is it allows you to have full permissions. You don't have to ask anybody to access your money. And when you do pull it, when you do go get that loan for $50,000, yeah, you're paying some interest on it. Forget about the interest. There's a cost of capital. You lost $5,000 of production if it wasn't an investment. You lost all of that capital that was in cash, if it was in a cash pile, forget about the interest. Just think about what's happening. If you take a loan out from a life insurance company, it's still there. Okay,
Yes.
the life insurance company still sees $100,000 of cash value, and you're getting dividends on that whole 100,000. Yeah, you're paying interest on 50,000, but don't you see the difference? And you're going and using that in another spot. So it's growing in the policy and is growing a business. And you didn't have to ask anybody for permission to do that. You got to do it because you wanted to.
Yep. Yep. The one thing I'll just clarify is that there are insurance companies, non-direct, direct, we know
Yep.
about that. So some insurance companies, when you take the loan, all of the money that's in your policy is not touched. So it is growing at that interest and dividend, whatever it is. Let's just say 4% a year. So it's growing in that. But then there are insurance companies that are direct, and a portion of that you won't necessarily get as the top dividend that you would by if you had just not taken the loan. But in my opinion, there's no real difference between direct and non-direct, because if you look at all the numbers, the interest on the loan and the dividend, they kind of wash. Doesn't matter which. The direct insurance company may be paying a little bit higher dividend than the non-direct. So what I'm saying is that there are no free lunches in insurance. There's no magic tricks, so to speak. Direct, non-direct.
Nope.
That's a whole other discussion. But because you had said that money never got taken. It never got hit. It was growing at the same amount and all that. But I just wanted to make that point.
I think that's a great point. And here's what I'll say to everyone that's listening. Don't recognize that and move on, because if that's the focus, again, then we're focusing on some of the weeds and then nitpicking that difference of, like you're saying, it's 0.25, 0.5%. It's so minuscule. When you're talking about power, get a freaking DPW dividend paying whole life insurance policy and borrow from it. There's so many good reasons to do it. And the reason why I want to be clear about this is I got really, really bogged down about that topic. Direct recognition versus indirect recognition. For me, it was a big stumbling block getting going. And I thought that certain companies that did it one way was good and other companies were bad. And they were just trying to get their clients for everything they were worth. There's pros and cons to everything, really. And don't focus on that, because again, that's not the focus. But I'm glad that you brought it up, because I think giving it a little bit of attention is, I don't want to be misleading anybody, so it's appropriate to give it some attention.
Yeah, we're both licensed with insurance companies that are direct and non-direct, and it really just depends on what the person wants to do, So it's a if you're focusing on that, you pointed out, you're going into the weeds. I like to say you're going along and you're picking up slugs and you're passing right by the gold coins. You're missing the point. It's the banking function that you want to control in your own life.
Yep. And I want to touch on this very briefly, but it deserves its own amount of time. And generally speaking, I provide a lot of context before getting to this point, but I just want to say, as we're talking about this, he said, can't I do the same thing with cash? Yes, you can do the same thing with cash, but you have to draw it out. You have to remove it from where it's at and transfer it over to something else.
And start over.
And start over. And all you're doing at that point is transacting money. We have forgot about capital. Capital is the value, it's the tradable value of an asset, right? And you use money to trade that value. Well, if your focus is all on money, can't I just do that with cash, being the question? If your focus is all on money, what value are you representing? You don't know. No one knows, right? It's just because it's money, like you're representing the value of your checking account. That's it. And that's not even your asset. That's the bank's. You know, so
True.
it's like you're making transactions, and that's great, but you're not representing anything substantial. And that's where infinite banking comes in, is representing something substantial. And when you do that, there's a lot of subsections that are important to note. There's 4 ways that cash value grows, 4 primary ways that cash value grows, and each of them have uh, their own part to play. One of them causes compounding growth. One of them causes real good stability. One of them causes absolute guarantees, and the other one is just a turbocharger. Like it just kicks everything off into high gear. So there's 4 different methods that cash value grows. You can't say that about cash. You can't say that about investments. You can't say that about real estate. And so that's why, yes, in the very near term, you're always going to be ahead if you deal with cash, because you're not creating a business. Nelson clarifies that in Becoming Your Own Banker. There's always a cost of starting a new business. And when you go into becoming your own banker, you are starting a business of banking.
Yeah.
And it has a little bit of a cost at the beginning.
Yep. Yeah. Well, just like buying a piece of real estate, you've got to take some cash, if we're talking about cash, and make a down payment. Yeah. And that you start this policy and it looks like, I'm losing, in the beginning, but over time, and time is the equalizer.
Yep.
Yeah. Good points, Kyle. Really great points.
Man, I love looking at that conversation about those 4 ways that cash value grows. And it's so funny when I'm talking to my clients, I'm like, sorry if I start yelling at you, because it's not you. It's just really exciting to me that you can have guaranteed growth that's turbocharged, that's compounding into the future, and guaranteed. How can you say all that in the same conversation about the same vehicle? That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I always like to point out that with whatever business and all these other things that you might do, they don't come with a death benefit. That's just like the cherry on top almost, you could look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
When I started my policy, I didn't look at it like that. I flexed the death benefit by, I created an 80-20, not a pure life insurance policy, but like Nelson was doing, but pretty close. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, fun, man. I feel like we touched on everything that was important to touch on. I feel like.
Yeah. Hopefully Jay will come back with some more questions.
Yeah.
And all of you too. Got any questions? Please let us know.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be a little 20-minute conversation, but there's so many, like we said in the other podcast, I think, a lot of cans of worms get opened. A lot of rabbit trails become very easy to walk down because everything's kind of tied together, and it's really, really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a wrap. I would ask that you like the podcast, subscribe, and please do send us any questions that you have. Kyle, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, thanks for hopping on a Saturday morning, kind of impromptu. I think this was a great time.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for the question, Jay.
Thank you for joining us on the Sound Banking Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on the notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for more content.